What's going on, guys? It's Cimoooooooo. Now today I wanted to bring you a card discussion on DD Crow, and a card that I feel personally is going to be the hand trap of choice for this format, at least until things start to shift differently, and I'm going to go ahead and explain why. So to start off, DD Crow is a level 1 Dark Winged Beast with 100 attack and 100 defense. And the effect reads that during either player's turn, you can discard this card, target one card in your opponent's graveyard, and banish it. So it's a hand trap, obviously, because you're not going to be playing this for any of the other purposes of its stats. It's cool that it has Dark Attribute, because that means you can use it in a deck that already utilizes Allure of Darkness, and if you don't need DD Crow, you can always banish it away for that, just to cycle through 2 more cards in your deck. You could also, I guess, search it off of Where Arf Thou if you want to take the 2000 damage, and if you happen to have another level 1 or something like that. So there is a lot of cool utility you can do with this card, you know, not even counting its effect, because its effect at the current moment in the meta, I feel, is so powerful, and frankly, it's a very main deck worthy hand trap. A lot of people have always considered DD Crow to be a side deck worthy card, and depending on the format, it usually hops in and out if, you know, banishing stuff out of the graveyard is very important. But I feel that the way the meta is shaped up now, this card could absolutely go in the main deck at 2 or even possibly 3 copies completely maxed out, and it would be really worth it. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain why. So starting off, if you checked out my meta analysis video, we're going to be talking about a lot of the decks I discussed in there, and even going beyond that as well. But to start off, we're going to start with Paleozoic. Now, this should be really no surprise that Paleozoic's probably going to be the best deck going into the April 2017 format, but there's so many good targets you can hit with DD Crow that it's absolutely amazing. So to start off, if you're going second against a Paleozoic player, and you happen to open up the DD Crow, you now have a way to possibly prevent them from opening on a turn 1 totally awesome, because they're going to do their whole shenanigans with their Swap Frog, sending their Ronin Totem and all that. You can use DD Crow to banish the Ronin Totem out of the graveyard, and now you don't have to deal with the totally awesome, in addition to all the other back row that they've opened. Then when you move on into the mid game and possibly the late game, you can use DD Crow to banish a Paleozoic monster that's trying to chain to one of the trap cards that's already been activated on the field to special summon itself, and not only will that prevent the Paleozoic monster from being special summoned back to the field, but it'll also cut off the chain, meaning that your opponent can't use any other, you know, trap cards or anything like that, and they're gonna have to waste another trap card and waste another Paleozoic monster in their graveyard if they really want to get that Paleozoic monster out onto the field. And having that sort of disruption is really, really cool. But it goes even further beyond that. Let's take a look at Infernoid, another really popular deck this format. Infernoid, obviously the deck revolves around banishing monsters from the graveyard, so even though these are inherent summons, if your opponent has, let's say, an Infernoid Onunku or a Deviati in the graveyard, and you really don't want that Onunku or Deviati to go off, you can use DD Crow during the standby phase or when you have priority in the main phase to do so, then banish that card from the graveyard, and now you don't have to worry about getting board wiped or getting your back row completely blown out or anything like that, and that's going to put you really far ahead, because your opponent might think, oh, that's totally fine. He might let you, you know, do certain moves because they know that they have the Onunku or the Deviati ready just to blow you out next turn, and then when you DD Crow that card out of their graveyard, they let you do all that and get all that card advantage or advance your game state to that point, and now they're just going to be completely shit out of luck by doing so. There's also so many other cards you can banish as well. If they have extra Infernoid monsters and you want to possibly hinder their plays by what they're able to summon, things like Etundal, Saitsamas, all these other cards, you can hit those with DD Crow as well. I think one of the biggest cards that you can hit is Fairytale Snow. Fairytale Snow has been just wrecking people's lives ever since Lightsworn and Infernoid have been popular in the meta, because Fairytale Snow just does so much for one card, and especially now with the inclusion of cards like That Grass Looks Greener, being able to just fill the graveyard with additional cards so that people can get 2, sometimes 3 uses out of a card like Fairytale Snow. DD Crow is the one card solid answer to the Fairytale Snow. A card like Artifact Lancia doesn't really work in this respect because that only prevents them from using Snow on their turn, but a lot of the time, the player that has the Fairytale Snow is going to use it during your turn to disrupt your plays, and having that DD Crow, not only are you going to banish the Snow from the graveyard, but also that you're going to have to banish 7 cards from their graveyard, because more than likely they're going to use it in response to doing something. You're going to use DD Crow's Chainlink 3, and then they're going to just lose all those resources in addition to the Fairytale Snow. You know, there's cards like Forbidden Chalice and stuff like that as well that people have had to waste on a card like Fairytale Snow, but then Snow will just recur itself, or if they have multiple copies, then they're just completely blown out anyway. But it's really cool that DD Crow kind of is just the one card answer to a card like Fairytale Snow. And then moving on to Zodiac. The Zodiac engine is still healthy, it's still alive and well, even with Rapier at 2. If you use DD Crow and you possibly hit a Rapier from the graveyard, then that can just completely disrupt all their potential combos that they were going to be doing anyway. But I think even more important than that, since a lot of people are adopting the Fusion Substitute combo to be able to get like +3, +5, even like +6 or 7 plays, depending on how far they're willing to go, you can use DD Crow to ban Elder Entity Norden. And by doing so, by banishing that Norden from the graveyard, you're just completely cutting off their plays, and you're probably going to leave them with a very inoptimal board. Hell, you could even banish the card that they're targeting off of Norden as well, but getting rid of the Norden entirely is really good because that means they can't recover it with Fusion Substitute. That means they're not going to be able to get anything off of the effect anyway, and it's just going to put you in a much more advantageous position by doing so. And again, I need to highlight, this is really good if you're going second, because if you open that DD Crow, you can potentially disrupt their turn 1 play, which people argue that going first puts you at such an advantage in comparison to a lot of other different formats. Having that DD Crow to stop that turn 1 can just be absolutely vital. Now, moving just beyond that, you know, I already talked about Fairytale Snow, but Lightsworn is another deck that DD Crow is incredible in as well. With cards like Wolf and Lumina and Felice and all these cards that either special summon themselves from the graveyard or are going to be special summoning other cards from the graveyard, DD Crow can just banish it and you don't have to worry about it. And since a lot of Lightsworn decks are also adopting the zombie engine as well, cards like Mizuki, cards like Gozuki, all these other really cool zombie cards that have a lot of graveyard interaction, DD Crow just handles it just all by itself. You know, there's all these other different decks that it's still good against, even if you go outside the main 3 or 4 meta decks. Let's take Water as another example. Water does a lot of different plays with Mermail Abyss Gund, recurring all the resources. It is another very powerful deck with Elder Entity Norden as well, so DD Crow is very effective there. You've got the Wind Witch invoked Eidolon deck as well, or the Wind Witch invoked Artifact deck, excuse me. That deck utilizes cards like Call of the Haunted to recover the artifacts from the graveyard so that you get locked out by Scythe or Moral Attack. You can DD Crow that and make their Call of the Haunteds absolutely worthless. You can use it to hit the invocation from the graveyard so they can't use that later on in the game, or banish the Alistair if you feel like you need to banish that as well. And by just banishing these resources, even though it's a simple 1-for-1, you're putting yourself in a much more advantageous position to win that game, because with their inability to recover those resources that they really need to advance their game state and just really put the pressure on you, DD Crow is a very good buffer from preventing them from doing that. You know, I could really keep going on and on because there's just so many different decks where DD Crow is so powerful against, especially in the current meta, that really I could just go on for another 10 minutes if I wanted to. But I really just wanted to give you guys an overview of the potential that DD Crow has. And even though Max C is at 1, a lot of players are still choosing to play the 1 Max C for good reason, because it's still one of the best hand traps in the game. But running copies of DD Crow makes it so that if you're running that 1 copy of Max C, you actually have another disruptive hand trap that you could draw into to potentially punish your opponent's plays in what they're doing and then completely turn the game back around into your favor. But guys, that's just going to do it for today's video. I really just wanted to highlight DD Crow and how amazing this card currently is right now, because I've been testing this in my decks at 2 and even 3 3 copies, and it's very rare that there's an instance where DD Crow is a bad card. Sure, maybe if you're going first in game 2, you might want to side it out for better cards, but if you have it in your main deck going first or second, you really can't go too wrong. But again, guys, that's just my opinion. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about DD Crow. I'd really love to hear it. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content, and also be sure to back me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time.